So I was watching this video from Football Iconic, and he mentioned something about Bruno Fernandes being among the best Man United players since the Ferguson era. Now this was quite interesting to me because I'd actually never thought that highly of him. And it got me thinking, why is he so easy to overlook? I mean, not for United fans, obviously, they see him differently. But for the rest of us, it's like Bruno just doesn't enter the conversation the way a player with his numbers should. Because if stats told the full story, he would be one of the greatest midfielders of his generation. We're talking about a player who, since arriving at Manchester United, has outperformed most of his Premier League peers in goals, assists, chances created, key passes, and in everything else that screams elite. And yet somehow, it still doesn't feel right. He doesn't get the same reverence that Kevin De Bruyne, Lampard, or even Gerrard get. So I made a post asking you guys what frustrates you about Bruno. But since a few of you replied, I decided to head over to Twitter, and that's where it got real. People seem to have all sorts of wild frustrations against Bruno. Complaints of him moaning a lot, disappearing in big games, celebrating too much for meaningless goals, and extending his contract at United like he's comfortable in mediocrity. And you know what? They're not all wrong. Watch him for 90 minutes and you'll see a player constantly yelling at teammates, arguing with refs, trying impossible passes and losing the ball way too often. He's not good at dominating possession or controlling the tempo. And depending on the day, he'll either carry you or crash you. Now, don't get me wrong, Bruno's numbers are undeniable. In his first full season, he dropped 45 goal contributions in all competitions, which is absurd for a midfielder, especially in a team as dysfunctional as United with rotating managers, a leaky defense and strikers who couldn't finish their dinner. And since then, he's never dipped below 20 goal contributions per season. Always top tier for key passes, expected assists and chances created. He has outproduced players who had a head start, became the fastest midfielder to score 50 goals for the club, and has been the creative engine in a team that, let's be honest, often doesn't even know what it's trying to be. So if you're purely looking at the data, he ticks every box. But here's the thing, his eye test and his stat sheet are beefing. When you watch him play, you can think he is awful. He spams crosses to no one, misplaces 5-yard passes, shoots from ridiculous angles, and he's always complaining at the ref. But then you open FOTMob or FBref after the game and he had like 5 key passes, 1 assist, 12 kilometers covered, and a 7.1 rating, which is understandably confusing. He's the most active player and the most erratic at the same time. And that's the whole point. Bruno is a walking contradiction. His stats are elite and his impact is real, but his whole game feels like he's trying to fast forward to the match-winning moment. He's always going for the killer pass, the impossible through ball, the Hollywood assist. There's no calmness or rhythm to his game, it's just constant intensity. He doesn't build the play, which means if it works, he looks like a genius. If it doesn't, he looks reckless, which is why I personally struggle to rate him. Not because the numbers lie, but because they don't tell the whole story. His highlights are elite for sure, and his production is top tier. But the in-game feeling is just messy. He takes penalties, plays almost every game, delivers from set pieces. So of course the numbers will pile up, but how he gets there, that's where the disconnection begins. The body language, the moaning, the waving of the arms, it drives me mad. I prefer a leader who looks like a leader, calm, composed, and always in control, which is the opposite of what Bruno does. He leads through emotion, and sometimes that emotion spills over and makes him look petulant. But honestly, what do I expect from a guy carrying a broken team on his back? And let's be real, this wouldn't be such a problem if he was a striker. But as a midfielder, we expect a certain level of control and rhythm which he doesn't offer, because when you think of great scoring midfielders, you think of players like Lampard, and just like Bruno, Lampard wasn't a pure playmaker or a silky technician. He was an attacking midfielder who lived off goals, assists, and late runs into the box. He didn't dictate games like Iniesta or dominate duels like Vieira, but he had end product, buckets of it, and nobody questioned his greatness. But here's the difference. Lampard passed the eye test. His movements were efficient, his touches were clean, his body language was calm. He looked in control, even when he wasn't having a standout game. Bruno, on the other hand, plays like he's at war, like every second is a battle. The energy is frantic and the execution is either hit or miss, which is messy. And that matters, because football isn't just about numbers, it's about perception, about how you look doing it and how you make people feel. And Lampard looked reliable while Bruno looks volatile. His high-risk style means he makes more mistakes and his visible frustration makes him an easy target. But again, Bruno walked into a broken Manchester United, with no defined system, constant managerial changes and zero structure, and instead of being allowed to just focus on football, he's had to be the creator, scorer, presser, leader and scapegoat all at once. It's no coincidence his most consistent years came when the team had at least a semi-functional setup around him. That's why, when he is playing for Portugal and surrounded by players with clear roles and a midfield that controls the ball, he suddenly looks cleaner. I watched him in the Nations League semis against Germany, and he was elite. His passing was more purposeful and his movements were way more dangerous. But at United, he has to be everything, which is insane. And to make it worse, modern football is ruled by social media, and Bruno is incredibly clippable, both in a good and bad way. 1 second, he's pulling off a no-look assist from 40 yards. The next, he's throwing himself to the ground and arguing with the ref, like the whole universe has wronged him. He gives both his fans and haters all the content they need, and once the narrative sets in, it's hard to escape. But we're being a bit unfair to him, because most of the legends we adore were flawed too. Lampard wasn't a press machine, Gerrard made risky passes, even De Bruyne loses the ball constantly. The difference is those players either won major trophies or played in teams with strong identities, and Bruno hasn't had that luxury yet. If he played for peak United, or under Klopp, or behind Haaland at City, we'd be talking about him like a generational midfielder. We'd be quoting the exact same stats, but this time using them to prove how world-class he is. Instead, he's doing it in a dysfunctional team, in a system that changes every season, so it's easier to downplay his greatness. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe Bruno Fernandes is hard to rate because he's a contradiction. He's messy, unpredictable, and flawed, but he's also one of the most productive, hard-working, and misunderstood midfielders in Europe, and without him, United are genuinely toothless.